Can't even afford a car, Gavin joked, spinning the keys to his SUV before sliding the loan papers toward me. Then at least contribute your signature. My mother stayed silent. My father watched the table. I found the hidden guarantee, closed the folder, and pushed the pen back. That was when the glasses began to tremble. A helicopter dropped over the trees and settled onto our lawn, blasting Gavin's papers across the room. He grinned, thinking his investor had arrived. I stood, picked up my bag, and said, "My ride's here." Then the woman stepping out looked past him, called me CEO, and Mom collapsed. That morning, I arrived at my parents' house outside Franklin in the backseat of a rideshare. Gavin was already on the porch beside a black SUV that still had temporary plates. He watched the car pull away, then lifted his keys. "Still borrowing rides at 37, I won't need a car later," I said. He laughed like I had handed him another excuse. Inside, the house smelled of dark coffee and Mom's lemon cake. The air conditioner hummed beneath the quiet clink of plates. Every wall in the living room carried proof of Gavin's importance graduation pictures, ribbon cuttings, framed articles about his first development project. There was not one photograph from the day I opened North Star's first flight base. I had invited all of them. Gavin had an investor meeting. Dad said the drive was too long. Mom promised they would visit once my little transportation business became established. 10 years later, they still had not asked what it had become. Before North Star, I had coordinated emergency logistics for a hospital. I learned how quickly a delayed flight could become a family's worst phone call. I built the company from that lesson, one medical contract at a time. My parents only knew I worked around airplanes. Mom kissed my cheek and pointed toward the dining room. "Your brother planned everything." That should have worried me. A thick folder waited at my chair, marked with colored tabs. Everyone else had a thin packet and a glass of iced tea. I had paperwork, a silver pen, and an empty signature line already facing me. Dad avoided my eyes. Gavin stood beside a television and began his presentation. "This is about protecting Mom and Dad," he said. "Taxes, long-term care, keeping the property in the family." The first slides showed smiling older couples, clean white cabins, and walking trails beneath Tennessee maples. Then the name appeared. Cedar Vale Recovery and Wellness Resort. My hand stopped on the folder. 3 days earlier, that same property had crossed my desk at North Star Critical Air. The investment committee was considering its abandoned runway and hangar as a possible medical aviation base. The moment I saw Gavin's company listed as the developer, I disclosed the relationship and removed myself from the review. Gavin clicked to an aerial photograph. "There's also an aviation group interested," he said. "Once they commit, this changes everything." He smiled at the room. He had no idea the company evaluating his project was mine. Gavin clicked to the next slide. It showed Cedar Vale finished in soft evening light. Every cabin occupied. The spa glowing. The old runway polished like a private airport. The rendering looked clean enough to smell like fresh pine. He talked about projected revenue, rising property values, and the aviation company that had already shown serious interest. He did not mention the unpaid contractor bills. He did not mention the permit still sitting with the county. He did not mention the loan coming due in 6 weeks. And he definitely did not mention that Dad had already put part of his retirement into the project. I opened the folder. The first pages looked harmless: property consent, operating authority, family approval. Colored tabs marked every place Gavin wanted my name. Then I reached the guarantee. $750,000. My name was printed beneath it. I looked up. Why is there a personal guarantee in a property consent package? Gavin barely glanced at me. It's standard. Then why didn't you mention it? Dad shifted in his chair. Ice clicked against his glass. Because we knew you'd make it complicated. Mom folded her napkin into smaller and smaller squares. Your brother is building something for all of us, she said. For all of us, you don't have children, she replied. What do you need your share for? The room went very still. Carver Family Land. LLC held the property around my parents' house. Mom and Dad controlled half. Gavin owned 25%. So did I. Without my approval, He could not pledge the land. He could not give the bank full authority. He could not make the guarantee look unified. That was why I had been invited. Not for advice, for permission. Gavin leaned against the table. Once the aviation buyer commits, the bridge loan gets paid off. And if they only want the runway and hangar? His smile tightened. They won't. You don't know that. Kendra crossed her arms. Some people build assets. Some people order rides and ask questions. Gavin laughed, lifting his SUV keys so they flashed beneath the dining room light. I'm trying to build something worth millions while she can't even afford a car. A few relatives smiled because they thought they were supposed to. Mom looked down. Dad said nothing. Gavin pushed the silver pen toward me. Since you can't contribute money, contribute your signature. I looked at the blank line beneath my name and then at the letter he kept calling a commitment. It promised nothing. They thought I was the poorest person in the room. That was exactly why they believed I would be the easiest one to pressure. I read the letter again. It said North Star was interested in the aviation portion of Cedar Vale. Interested, not committed. Not buying the resort, not promising to rescue Gavin. He had taken one cautious sentence and built an entire family emergency around it. What happens if the buyer only wants the runway I asked? Gavin's face hardened. They won't. And if they do, Kendra stepped forward. Why are you trying so hard to make this fail? I'm trying to understand what you're asking me to risk. Mom pressed both palms against the table. You always do this. Gavin brings us an opportunity, and you turn it into an interrogation. Dad pointed toward the signature tabs. The bank needs the papers today? That was when I saw the payment schedule buried near the back. The bridge loan was $3.8 million. The project was already behind. If the sale did not happen, the family land could be pulled into the default. My share, my parents' home, the field where my mother grew tomatoes every summer. All of it. Gavin had not invited me to save the family. He had invited me to absorb his failure. For 1 second. I was 16 again, standing beside my broken bicycle while Gavin drove away to practice in Dad's truck. He had backed over the rear wheel and shrugged. Mom had told me to walk. Your brother has commitments, she said. The details changed over the years. The rule never did. Gavin moved forward. I carried the inconvenience. Mom looked at me now with the same tired impatience. What exactly do you have to lose? That sentence broke something cleanly inside me, not loudly. Just enough. I closed the folder and pushed the silver pen back across the table. I'm not signing. Gavin stared at me. Don't be dramatic. I'm not pledging my share of the land. I'm not guaranteeing your loan. And Mom and Dad need their own attorney before they sign anything else. Dad's chair scraped the floor. This is a family matter. No, it becomes a bank matter the second this project fails. Mom's eyes filled. You would let your brother lose everything. I won't let him lose my future too. Gavin's mouth twisted. Listen to you. No house, no husband, no kids. You show up in a rented car and suddenly you're a financial expert. I did not tell him about North Star. I did not need to. A dangerous agreement did not become safe because my family had underestimated me. Then the glasses began to tremble. A low thudding rolled across the windows. Loose pages slid toward the edge of the table. Gavin looked outside, smiled, and straightened his collar. The aviation people, he said. I picked up my bag. That helicopter had never come for him. The helicopter came over the tree line low enough to shake dust from the porch light. Its white and gray body tilted into the afternoon sun. The North Star logo bright against the side. The sound swallowed every voice in the house. Papers lifted from the dining table and slapped against the floor. Gavin lunged for the guarantee pages he had spent an hour trying to make me sign. Outside, the grass flattened beneath the rotors. Gavin hurried onto the porch, smoothing his shirt. I told you the aviation group was serious. Kendra pulled out her phone. Dad stood straighter. Mom touched her hair. I picked up my bag. Gavin turned. Where are you going? My ride's here. The helicopter settled on the south lawn. The cabin door opened, and Talia Monroe stepped down in a North Star flight jacket. She walked past Gavin and stopped in front of me. Miss Carver. Mercy Ridge moved the site review forward. She said, "The board is already waiting." Gavin stared at her, then at me. "You work for North Star." I founded it. For once, nobody laughed. Kendra lowered her phone, her eyes locked onto the logo. "Gavin," she whispered, "isn't that the company from the term sheet?" His face lost its color. He looked at the helicopter, the folder in his hands, and then back at me. "You're the buyer North Star's investment committee is evaluating an aviation site," I said. "I disclosed that Cedar Vale belongs to my brother and removed myself from the review. You knew. I recognized the property 3 days ago, and you said nothing. I signed a confidentiality agreement." Mom stepped off the porch. "Lydia, you own that company. I helped build it." Gavin's voice came out thin. "North Star is the buyer." Mom looked from him to me, then down at the loan papers scattered across the grass. One hand reached for the porch rail and missed. "Mom." Her knees gave out. I caught her before her head hit the steps. Talia was beside me immediately, and the flight medic came running. We lowered Mom onto the shaded grass. The medic checked her pulse and blood pressure while Dad hovered beside us. "She's breathing normally," the medic said. "Looks like heat and stress." Mom opened her eyes less than a minute later. "Lydia, I'm here." I held her hand until the color returned to her face. Only after the medic said she was stable did Gavin pull me aside. "You can make them approve the purchase," he said. That was his first private sentence to me. Not, "I'm sorry." "Can you get North Star to buy the whole property?" he continued. "The resort, the cabins, everything. If they raise the offer, the bridge loan gets covered. I'm not part of the decision. You run the company. I lead it. I don't use it to hide my family's mistakes." His eyes flicked toward Mom. "Then sign the guarantee. Keep the project alive until the deal closes." "No. You would rather watch me lose everything. I would rather not lose Mom and Dad's home with you." His face tightened. "You let us think you were broke." I looked at the SUV keys still hanging from his finger. "You didn't think I was poor. You thought I was powerless." He flinched. "You could have told us. I invited all of you to North Star's first base opening. Nobody came. I told you I handled medical flights. You called it a booking service. You never asked what I built. You only asked what you could take." Dad came closer, his shoulders bent. "I put money into Cedar Vale," he admitted. "Some of my retirement." Mom closed her eyes. "How much?" she asked. Dad did not answer. Gavin tried again. "If you walk away, this project dies. A project that survives by putting our parents' home at risk was already dying." Mom reached for me. "Please help your brother. My success does not make this guarantee safer." I looked at all of them. "I won't punish you, but I won't finance the way you treated me." I told Dad to hire an independent attorney. I told Mom not to sign another page. Then I picked up the silver pen, clicked it shut, and put it inside my bag. No signature. Talia touched my arm. "We need to go." I walked toward the helicopter while Gavin stood in the yard holding papers that no longer had power over me. Minutes later, Tennessee unfolded beneath us. Cedar Vale appeared beyond the hills, its unfinished cabins small against the trees. From the air, Gavin's dream looked almost finished. The debts he had hidden were just beginning to show. The first thing I did at North Star was remove my name from every Cedar Vale decision. I met with the board, disclosed the family connection again, and asked legal counsel to document that I would not take part in the valuation, negotiations, or vote. No one argued. The independent review took 19 days. By the end of the first week, the story Gavin had sold our family had started to collapse. The resort was more than a year behind schedule. A water treatment permit had not been approved. 2 contractors had filed payment claims. The occupancy forecasts assumed nearly every cabin would stay full within 6 months of opening. North Star's letter had never promised to buy the resort. It only expressed interest in the runway, hangar, and enough surrounding land to build a medical flight base. The bridge lender declined Gavin's application after I refused to sign. Without unanimous approval from the family LLC, my parents' property could not be pledged. Their house stayed safe. Cedar Vale did not. When Gavin missed another payment, The lender took control of the project and opened the useful portions to bids. North Star submitted one through outside counsel. I did not see the offer. I did not join the meeting. I did not vote. The company eventually purchased the runway, the hangar, a narrow access road, and the land needed for operations at an independently assessed price. It did not buy the unfinished spa, the half-built cabins, or Gavin's personal debt. He called me the morning the sale became public. "You bought my future out from under me." I stood beside the window in my office, watching a flight crew load emergency equipment. "No," I said. I refused to put mine underneath it. He hung up. A month later, Gavin sold the SUV he had used to mock me. I heard about it from Mom. Not because I asked. Dad lost part of the retirement money he had chosen to invest. That was painful, but the house remained theirs. I helped them hire an independent financial advisor and paid Mom's medical bills directly. I did not give either of them cash to pass through Gavin. Mom started calling more often. "One evening," she said, "we're proud of you now." I stared at the silver pen in my desk drawer. "I needed you to respect me before you were impressed." She went quiet. The apology that followed was imperfect. Dad admitted he had treated Gavin's confidence like proof and my silence like failure. Mom still slipped into sentences that began with, "Your brother is struggling." I stopped fixing those sentences for her. My boundaries were simple. No hidden family meetings, no unsigned papers, no loans, no conversations where love meant surrender. 6 months later, Cedar Vale reopened as a North Star medical base. The old hangar held flight equipment instead of sales banners. The runway carried transplant teams and emergency crews across the state. At the opening, I arrived in an ordinary car. No helicopter, no audience waiting to be impressed. Gavin still told relatives I had destroyed him. Maybe one day he would understand. I was only the first person who stopped saving him. At Cedar Vale, I watched a North Star helicopter lift from the runway carrying a transplant team toward a hospital 2 counties away. Gavin once said I could not afford a car. The truth was, I had been worthy of respect before the helicopter touched my parents' lawn. It only made enough noise for them to look at me. Love is not a signature taken through guilt, and family is not permission to risk another person's future. If you have ever been called selfish for setting a boundary, share your story below. Subscribe so you do not miss the next one.